Welcome to Thrones Rewritten, where we reimagine the epic tales of A Song of Ice and Fire with bold new twists. In today's video, we dive into a gripping what-if scenario. What if Bran Stark never fell from that tower and revealed a shattering secret to Ned Stark? Expect political intrigue, fierce battles, and the Stark family facing a realm on the brink of war. If you love Game of Thrones and crave fresh takes on its iconic moments, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and join us in the comments to share your thoughts on this alternate Westeros. Let's rewrite the throne. The wind howled through the broken tower of Winterfell, carrying the bite of an early northern chill. Bran Stark, 7 years old and nimble as a squirrel, clung to the weathered stone, his fingers finding purchase in cracks worn needle smooth by centuries. He loved climbing, the freedom of it, the way the world shrank below him, and Winterfell became a map of stone and timber. Today he'd chosen the broken tower, its jagged silhouette a challenge he hadn't yet conquered. His mother's warnings echoed faintly in his mind, but they were drowned out by the thrill of ascent. He was nearly at the top when he heard voices, low, urgent, and unfamiliar in their tone. Bran froze, his small body pressed against the cold stone. The window above was half shuttered, but slivers of light spilled through, and with them words. A man's voice, sharp and mocking, followed by a woman's, softer but laced with steel. Curiosity tugged at Bran, stronger than caution. He edged upward, silent as a shadow, and peered through the gap. Inside, two figures stood entwined, their golden hair catching the torchlight. Jaime Lannister, the Kingslayer, his white cloak discarded on the floor, held a woman Bran recognized instantly, Queen Cersei, her emerald eyes glinting with something fierce and unguarded. Their embrace was not one of siblings. Bran's young mind struggled to parse what he saw, but his heart knew it was wrong, secret, forbidden. He gasped, a small sound, but it was enough. Cersei's head snapped toward the window. "What was that?" she hissed, pulling away. Jaime's hand went to his sword hilt, his eyes scanning the darkness. Nothing, a bird, perhaps. Bran's pulse thundered. He scrambled downward, his hand slipping on the stone, but fear made him quick. He didn't look back, didn't dare breathe until his boots hit the frozen ground. He ran, weaving through Winterfell's courtyards, past the stables and the godswood, until he reached the great hall where he knew his father would be. Eddard Stark sat at the high table reviewing ledges with Maester Luwin. The burdens of lordship weighed heavily on him, though his face remained as unyielding as the wall. His friend, King Robert Baratheon, had arrived only days ago, bringing with him the chaos of the royal court. Ned's thoughts were on the feast to come, on the delicate balance of hospitality and vigilance, when the hall's heavy doors burst open. Bran stumbled in, his face flushed, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Father!" he cried, heedless of the servants turning to stare. Ned rose, his gray eyes narrowing. "Bran, what's wrong?" Maester Luwin set down his quill, concern creasing his brow. "Are you hurt, lad?" Bran shook his head, his words tumbling out. "I saw them, Jaime Lannister and the Queen. In the broken tower, they were together. Not like brother and sister. It was wrong, father, I know it was." The air in the hall seemed to thicken. Ned's face hardened, a storm gathering behind his eyes. He knelt before Bran, and gripping his shoulders gently but firmly. "Tell me exactly what you saw, Bran. Every detail. Leave nothing out." Haltingly, Bran recounted the scene, the whispered words, the discarded cloak, the way Cersei's hands clung to Jaime's shoulders. Ned listened without interruption, his jaw tightening with each word. When Bran finished, a heavy silence fell. Maester Luwin spoke first, his voice low. "My lord, if this is true—" "It is true!" Bran insisted, his voice cracking. "I wouldn't lie!" Ned placed a hand on Bran's head, his touch steadying. "I know you wouldn't, lad. You've done well to tell me." He stood, his gaze distant, as if seeing through the walls of Winterfell to King's Landing itself. "Luwin, send for Sir Rodrik and Jory Cassel. Discreetly. No one else is to know of this." The maester nodded and hurried from the hall. Ned turned to Bran. "You are to stay in your chambers until I call for you. Speak of this to no one, and not Robb, not Sansa, not even Arya. Do you understand?" Bran nodded, his eyes wide. "Yes, father." As Bran was escorted away by a trusted guard, Ned's mind raced. The truth Bran had uncovered was a blade, sharp and double-edged. Cersei and Jaime Lannister, lovers. If true, it cast doubt on the legitimacy of the royal children. Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen. It was treason of the highest order. a secret that could topple the Baratheon dynasty. But Ned knew Robert's court was a nest of vipers, and the Lannisters were its deadliest serpents. To act on this without proof was to invite ruin. By nightfall, Winterfell buzzed with the preparations for the feast, but in Ned's solar, a quieter council convened. Sir Roderick Cassel, grizzled and loyal, stood alongside Jory Cassel, Ned's captain of guards. Maester Luwin had returned, his chain clinking softly as he closed the door. Ned recounted Bran's tale, his voice steady but grave. Bran is no liar, but he's a boy. What he saw may not be what he thinks. Yet I cannot ignore this. If the Queen and her brother are involved, it changes everything. Sir Roderick's hand rested on his sword. If it's true, my lord, it's a danger to the king and the realm. The Lannisters hold too much power as it is. Jory nodded. Aye, but accusing them without evidence is a death sentence. The Queen's not one to forgive a slight, and Jaime's blade is as quick as his tongue. Maester Luwin clasped his hands. We need proof, Lord Eddard. A witness, a letter, something tangible. Without it, this is hearsay, and the Lannisters will twist it against you. Ned's gaze settled on the fire in the hearth, its flames casting long shadows. Robert must be told, but not yet. He's hot-tempered, and Cersei is his wife. If he believes this without proof, he'll act rashly, and the Lannisters will strike back. If he doesn't believe it, he'll see it as an insult to his honor. Then what do we do, my lord? Sir Roderick asked. Ned's voice was iron. We watch. Jory, double the guards on Bran and the other children. No one is to approach them without my leave. Roderick, have your men keep an eye on the Lannisters, discreetly. Note their movements, who they speak to. Luwin, search the records for anything that might hint at this, connection. Old rumors, letters, anything. The men nodded, but Luwin hesitated. My lord, if this is true, it may not be the first time. The Lannisters are cunning, and secrets like this are guarded fiercely. We must tread carefully. Ned's hand tightened into a fist. I know, but if Bran's life is at risk because of what he saw, I'll not let it pass. No harm will come to my family. The feast that night was a study of contrasts. The great hall of Winterfell roared with laughter and song, the air thick with the scents of roasted boar, spiced wine, and fresh-baked bread. Robert Baratheon, red-faced and already deep in his cups, bellowed for more ale, his arm slung around a servant girl. Beside him, Cersei sat like a statue carved from ice, her smile sharp enough to cut. Jaime stood at the edge of the hall, his golden armor gleaming, his eyes scanning the crowd with a predator's alertness. Ned watched them all, his own wine untouched. Across the table, Catelyn sensed his unease, her hand brushing his under the table. "What troubles you, Ned?" she whispered. He shook his head, his voice low. "Later, Cat. Not here." Bran, seated with his siblings, kept his eyes on his plate, though Arya nudged him, whispering about the jugglers. Ned had instructed Robb to keep Bran close, and his eldest son, ever dutiful, hovered protectively. Sansa, dreamy-eyed, stole glances at Prince Joffrey, unaware of the storm brewing beneath the surface. As the night wore on, Ned's gaze met Jaime's across the hall. The Kingslayer raised his goblet in a mocking toast, his smile all teeth. Ned's stomach twisted. Did Jaime suspect something? Had Cersei's sharp ears caught Bran's gasp in the tower? The thought gnawed at him, but he kept his face a mask of northern stoicism. In the days that followed, Winterfell became a web of quiet vigilance. Jory's men shadowed the Lannisters, noting Jaime's late-night visits to Cersei's chambers, the way their guards lingered too long at certain posts. Maester Luwin pored over old correspondence, finding whispers of Lannister scandals buried in cryptic letters from King's Landing. None of it was proof, but it was enough to deepen Ned's unease. Bran, confined to the safety of Winterfell's inner walls, chafed at his restrictions. He missed climbing, missed the freedom of the roofs and towers. One afternoon he slipped away from his guards, determined to prove he wasn't a child to be coddled. He made for the Godswood, where the heart tree's red eyes seemed to watch him. There, hidden among the roots, he overheard 2 Lannister men-at-arms muttering about the Queen's orders and keeping eyes on the Stark boy. Fear gripped Bran, but so did resolve. He returned to Ned that evening, his voice steady despite his trembling hands. "They are watching me, father. The Lannisters. I heard their men in the Godswood." Ned's face darkened. He sent for Jory at once, ordering the guards doubled again. That night he sat with Catelyn in their chambers, the truth spilling out in hushed tones. Her face paled as she listened, her hands clutching his. "Gods, Ned," she whispered. "If this is true, the children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, they're not Robert's. The throne is built on a lie." Ned nodded, his voice grim. "And if we expose it, we start a war. The Lannisters won't go quietly, and Tywin's armies are vast." Catelyn's eyes burned with a mother's fury. "Then we protect our own. Bran's in danger, Ned. We can't wait for proof that may never come." Ned took her hand, his grip firm. "I'll speak to Robert, but first I need to know he'll listen. He's not the man he was, Cat. The court has changed him." The next morning, Ned rode out with Robert on a hunt. The king's idea of sport more about drinking than tracking. Deep in the wolfswood, away from prying ears, Ned broached the subject carefully. "Robert, there's something you need to hear. It's about Cersei." Robert snorted, his breath reeking of wine. What's she done now? Spent another fortune on silks? Ned's voice was low, deliberate. "It's more serious than that. There's talk, credible talk, that she's been unfaithful. With Jaime." The king's laughter died. His face reddened, not with drink, but with rage. "You're saying my wife's betting her own brother? That's madness, Ned. Who's spreading this filth?" "A witness," Ned said, careful not to name Bran. "Someone I trust. But I need proof before I act. I'm telling you because you deserve to know." Robert's hand tightened on his reins, his knuckles white. "If this is true, I'll have their heads, both of them. But if it's not, Ned, and you've slandered my queen—" "I'd never lie to you, Robert," Ned said, meeting his gaze. "But we must be sure. Let me investigate quietly. If it's true, we'll bring it to light together." The king stared at him, his anger warring with doubt. Finally he nodded, his voice a growl. "Do it. But if you're wrong, Ned, it's your honor on the line." Back at Winterfell, Ned's investigation intensified. He sent trusted men to King's Landing, seeking old allies like Jon Arryn's former confidants. Maester Luwin uncovered a letter from Lisa Arryn written years ago, hinting at Lannister secrets that Jon had been probing before his death. The pieces were falling into place, but they were still too few, too fragile. Meanwhile, Cersei grew restless. She noticed the extra guards the way Ned's men watched her retinue. One night she confronted Jaime in her chambers, her voice a hiss. "The Starks know something. That boy, Bran, he saw us, I'm sure of it." Jaime's hand rested on his sword. "If he did, he's a problem, a small one, easily solved." "No," Cersei snapped. "No accidents. Not here. Ned Stark's no fool. If the boy dies, he'll point the finger at us. We need to be smarter." Jaime smirked. "Then we discredit them. Turn Robert against his precious friend. A few whispers, a few coins." Cersei's eyes gleamed. "Yes, but we act fast. Ned Stark's digging Jaime, and if he finds what he's looking for, we're finished." As the royal party prepared to depart Winterfell, Ned stood at a crossroads. He had Robert's tentative trust, but no proof. Bran's safety hung in the balance, and the Lannisters' suspicions were growing. He knew the truth could spark a war, but silence could doom his family. The North, with its ancient honor, demanded action, but the South, with its treacherous games, required caution. Ned called Bran to his solar one last time before the king's departure. "You were brave, Bran," he said, his voice soft but firm. "What you saw may change the realm, but it's dangerous knowledge. You must stay strong, and you must stay silent." Bran nodded, his small face resolute. "I will, father, for you, for Winterfell." Ned placed a hand on his son's shoulder, pride and fear warring within him. The game had begun, and the Starks were now players, whether they wished it or not. As the royal banners faded into the distance, Ned knew one thing for certain. The truth Bran had uncovered would either save the North or destroy it. The road to King's Landing stretched long and dusty, a ribbon of earth winding through fields and forests, past rivers swollen with spring melt. Eddard Stark rode at the head of his household guard, his face as unyielding as the northern granite, though his heart churned with unease. King Robert Baratheon, his old friend, rode beside him, boisterous and red-faced, regaling the party with tales of battles long past. But Ned's thoughts were elsewhere, on the secret Bran had uncovered, on the danger it posed to his family, and on the treacherous game awaiting him in the capital. Winterfell felt a world away, its gray walls and warm hearths replaced by the looming shadow of the Red Keep. Ned had accepted Robert's offer to serve as Hand of the King, not out of ambition, but necessity. The truth about Cersei and Jaime Lannister, if proven, could unravel the realm. He needed to be close to the throne, to gather evidence, to protect Robert from the vipers circling him. Yet every step south felt like a step deeper into a mire. Behind him, Sansa rode in a wheelhouse with Arya, her excitement at the prospect of court life undimmed. Ned had kept Bran's secret from them, from Catelyn, even from Robb, who now ruled Winterfell in his stead. The fewer who knew, the safer they'd be. But the weight of it pressed on Ned, heavier with each mile. In Winterfell, Bran sat by the heart tree, its red eyes staring through him. He felt small beneath its ancient gaze, smaller still, since this was the day in the broken tower. His father's orders confined him to the castle's inner walls. His climbing days ended by the shadow of danger. Robb, stern and newly burdened as acting lord, watched him like a hawk. Arya pestered him with questions he couldn't answer, and Sansa, before leaving, had sighed about missing Winterfell's simplicity. Only the gods' wood offered solace, its silence a shield against the whispers of Lannister men-at-arms. Bran's dreams were troubled, filled with flashes of golden green, Jaime's sword, Cersei's eyes. He woke sweating, clutching the furs, wondering if he'd done right by telling his father. What if he'd misunderstood? What if he'd brought danger to them all? Yet the memory of that tower, of the wrongness he'd seen, was sharp as a blade. He'd told the truth. Now he had to be brave, as father had said. King's Landing greeted Ned with a blast of heat, and the stench of too many bodies pressed too close. The Red Keep loomed atop Aegon's high hill, its red stone glowing like blood in the sunset. Robert clapped Ned on the shoulder, grinning. "Welcome to the Viper's Nest, Ned. Keep your honor close, and your sword closer." Ned managed a grim nod. The court was a maze of false smiles and hidden knives, its players already circling. Petyr Baelish, with his mocking grin, greeted him in the throne room, his eyes glinting with secrets. Varys the Spider offered silken words that carried no weight. Grand Maester Pycelle droned about the realm's health, his loyalty to the Lannisters plain in his deference to Cersei. And Cersei herself, seated beside the Iron Throne, watched Ned with a gaze that could cut glass. Jaime Lannister stood at her side, his white cloak pristine, his smile a challenge. "Lord Stark," he said, voice smooth as silk, "the North must feel far away. I trust you'll find the capital enlightening." Ned's hand itched for ice, but he kept his tone even. "I serve the king, Sir Jaime. That's all that matters." Jaime's eyes flickered, searching for a crack in Ned's composure. Finding none, he inclined his head and sauntered away, leaving Ned with the weight of his suspicion. The Kingslayer knew something, or suspected it. Ned would need to move carefully. That night, in the Tower of the Hand, Ned met with Jory Cassell and a handful of trusted men he'd brought from Winterfell. "The Lannisters are watching us," he said, his voice low. "Cersei's spies are everywhere. We need proof of what Bran saw. Letters, witnesses, anything. But we can't trust the court. Baelish, Varys, Pycelle, they all have their own games." Jory nodded, his face grim. "I'll start in the city, my lord. Taverns, brothels, secret slip where wine flows." "Be discreet," Ned warned, "and watch your back. The Lannisters play for keeps." Ned turned to Maester Luwin's letters, sent from Winterfell. Luwin had found fragments of old correspondence hinting at Jon Arryn's suspicions about the royal's children's parentage. The late hand had been investigating Lannister secrets before his sudden death, a death Ned now doubted was natural. He needed to retrace Arryn's steps, but the trail was cold, and the capital was no place for blunt northern honesty. In Winterfell, Robb Stark stood in the great hall, his direwolf Grey Wind at his side. At 16, he was broad-shouldered and steady, but the weight of lordship sat heavy on him. Catelyn, ever vigilant, advised him daily, her letters to Ned filled with cautions about the Lannisters' influence in the north. The royal visit had left behind a handful of Lannister men-at-arms, ostensibly to strengthen ties. Robb distrusted them, their golden lion cloaks a stark contrast to Winterfell's gray. Bran, restless and forbidden from climbing, took to shadowing Robb, his small form slipping through the castle's corridors. He overheard the Lannister men muttering in the stables, their words laced with contempt for northern savages. One night he caught a name, Lancel, a Lannister cousin serving as Robert's squire, now lingering in Winterfell. Bran's instincts screamed danger, he told Robb, his voice urgent. "They're spying, Robb," Bran said, his eyes wide. "They're watching us for the Queen." Robb's jaw tightened. "You're sure of this?" Bran nodded. "I heard them. Lancel's sending messages south." Catelyn, overhearing, joined them, her face pale but resolute. "We can't act openly, not without proof, but we can watch them as they watch us. Robb, send Theon to keep an eye on Lancel. He's slippery enough for the task." Robb hesitated. Theon Greyjoy, his ward and friend, was loyal but reckless. Still, he nodded. "I'll do it. And Bran, stay close. No more sneaking about." Bran bristled but obeyed, though his dreams grew darker. The three-eyed crow appeared, its voice a whisper. "Look with your eyes, Brandon Stark. See the truth." He woke trembling, unsure what it meant, but certain it was tied to the tower, to the secret he'd unleashed. In King's Landing, Ned's investigation crept forward. Jory's men scoured the city, listening for whispers of Lannister scandals. One name surfaced repeatedly. Stannis Baratheon, Robert's brother, who had fled to Dragonstone after Jon Arryn's death. Rumors said Stannis suspected the truth about Cersei's children, though he'd kept his counsel. Ned wrote to Dragonstone, a cautious letter seeking alliance, but he knew Stannis was no friend to haste. Meanwhile, Ned probed the court. He questioned Pycelle about Arryn's final days, noting the old maester's evasive answers. Baelish, ever eager to curry favor, offered tidbits about Lannister debts, but nothing concrete. Varys, in a rare moment of candor, warned Ned to tread lightly. "The lioness guards her cubs fiercely, Lord Stark," the eunuch murmured, "and her claws are sharp." Ned's greatest lead came from an unexpected source, Sansa. At a court feast, she overheard Cersei and Lancel whispering about keeping the North in check. Innocent of the full context, she told Ned, her eyes bright with the thrill of intrigue. Ned's blood ran cold. The Lannisters were moving, perhaps suspecting Bran's knowledge. He doubled the guards on Sansa and Arya, though Arya chafed at the restriction, slipping away to explore the city's underbelly. One evening, Ned visited the royal sept, seeking clarity. There he found Cersei praying before the mother's altar, her face a mask of piety. She rose, her smile sharp. "Lord Stark, you seem troubled. Is the hand's burden so heavy?" Ned met her gaze, his voice steady. "The truth is a heavy thing, your grace. Heavier still when it's hidden." Cersei's eyes narrowed, but her smile held. "Truth is a slippery thing in King's Landing. Be careful you don't lose your grip." The exchange confirmed Ned's fears. Cersei suspected he knew. The game was no longer a shadow play, it was a duel, and the first blood was yet to be drawn. In Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy proved his worth. He caught Lancel slipping a letter to a rider bound for King's Landing, its seal bearing the Lannister lion. Robb intercepted it, breaking the wax with a grim expression. The letter was coded, but Maester Luwin deciphered enough to confirm Bran's fears. Cersei had ordered her men to watch the Stark children, especially Bran, for signs of dangerous knowledge. Catelyn's face was stone as she read the letter. "They know Bran saw something. We can't wait for Ned to act. We need to protect our own." Robb nodded, his youth giving way to resolve. "I'll send men to shadow their riders. If they're plotting against us, we'll know." Bran, listening from the doorway, felt a surge of guilt. Had his truth endangered them all? Yet he remembered his father's words. "You were brave, Bran." He vowed to be braver still. That night he slipped into the Godswood, kneeling before the heart tree. "Show me what to do," he whispered. The wind stirred, and in his mind's eye he saw a flash of green flame, a shadow moving south. He didn't understand, but he told Robb, who frowned but didn't dismiss it. "Keep your dreams to yourself for now," Robb said. "But don't stop listening, Bran. You see things we don't." In King's Landing, the Lannisters struck first. A fire broke out in the Tower of the Hand, a sudden blaze that consumed Ned's chambers. Jory and his men pulled Ned to safety, but his papers, letters, notes, fragments of Arryn's investigation, were ash. The fire was ruled an accident, but Ned knew better. Cersei's hand was in this, a warning to back off. Robert, drunk and distracted, dismissed Ned's concerns. "Fires happen, Ned. Don't see plots in every shadow." Ned's frustration grew. He needed proof, and he needed it fast. He turned to an unlikely ally, Petyr Baelish. In a shadowed corner of a flea-bottom tavern, Littlefinger smirked over his wine. You want dirt on the Lannisters? It'll cost you, Stark. But I can point you to a man, Gendry, a bastard of Robert's. He's proof the king's seed runs true, unlike Cersei's brood. Ned's eyes narrowed. Why help me? Baelish shrugged. Chaos is a great teacher, and I have no love for lions. Ned followed the lead, finding Gendry in a blacksmith's shop. The boy, broad-shouldered and black-haired, bore Robert's stamp unmistakably. It wasn't proof of Cersei's treason, but it was a piece of the puzzle. Ned arranged for Gendry's protection, and knowing the Lannisters would kill to keep such evidence hidden. As spring turned to summer, the tension in King's Landing thickened. Ned's men uncovered a witness, a former maid who had seen Jaime and Cersei together years ago, but she vanished before she could testify, her body later found in the Blackwater. Ned's frustration mounted, but he pressed on, driven by duty and fear for Bran. Cersei, meanwhile, wove her own web. She planted rumors that Ned was plotting against Robert, sowing doubt in the king's mind. Jaime, ever her blade, watched Ned's men, his presence a constant threat. At court, Cersei played the dutiful queen, but her eyes followed Ned, calculating. One night, Arya overheard a plot in the Red Keep's tunnels, Lannister men planning to ambush Jory's patrol. She warned Ned, her small face fierce. Ned sent Jory with extra men, thwarting the attack, but 2 of his guards died. The message was clear. The Lannisters were done with subtlety. In Winterfell, Bran's dreams grew vivid. The 3-eyed crow showed him a lion's shadow over King's Landing, a blade poised above his father's neck. He told Catelyn, who wrote to Ned, urging him to return, but Ned's reply was firm. I'm close, Cat. The truth is near. Keep Bran safe. Robb, acting on Bran's warning, caught Lancel meeting a Lannister spy in the Wolfswood. Under questioning, Lancel confessed to relaying Cersei's orders to neutralize any Stark threats. Robb confined him, sending word to Ned. The confession was damning, but it wasn't enough to prove the incest. Still, it was leverage. Ned stood on the precipice. He had fragments. Gendry, Lancel's confession, Aaron's notes, but no irrefutable proof. Robert's trust wavered, poisoned by Cersei's whispers. The court watched, waiting for Ned to stumble. And in Winterfell, Bran's dreams warned of a storm approaching, a green flame that could burn them all. One night, Ned received a message from Stannis, sealed with a Baratheon stag. It was brief. Jon Arryn found the truth. The children are not Robert's. I gather my forces. Act swiftly, or the realm bleeds. Ned's heart sank. Stannis knew, but his absence left Ned alone against the Lannisters. He needed one final piece, one witness or a document to bring to Robert. But time was running out. Cersei's smile at court grew bolder, Jaime's hand rested too often on his sword, and Ned felt the noose tightening. In Winterfell, Bran knelt before the heart tree, his dreams a torrent of images. Ned in a hall of thrones, a lion's roar, a crow's cry. "Help me," he whispered. The wind answered, and he saw a face. Not his father's, but a boy's with Robert's eyes. Gendry. The key. Bran didn't know how, but he knew he had to tell Ned. He ran to Robb, his voice urgent. "Father needs Gendry. He's in danger, Robb. We have to warn him." As Robb drafted a raven, the game in King's Landing reached its breaking point. Ned, unaware of Bran's vision, prepared to confront Robert with what he had. The truth was close, but so was the blade. And in the Red Keep, Cersei whispered to Jaime, her voice cold as winter. If Stark moves, he dies. The Red Keep was a labyrinth of stone and secrets, its corridors echoing with the whispers of a court poised on the edge of chaos. Eddard Stark stood in the Tower of the Hand, his chambers still blackened from the fire that had devoured his papers. The air smelled of ash and betrayal. Before him, on a scarred oaken table, lay the fragments of his investigation, a letter from Stannis Baratheon confirming Jon Arryn's suspicions, a coded confession from Lancel Lannister implicating Cersei's orders to spy on the Starks, and the name of Gendry, a bastard boy whose Baratheon blood was a silent rebuke to the golden-haired royal children. It was not enough. Not yet, but it was all Ned had, and time was slipping through his fingers like sand. In Winterfell, Bran Stark knelt before the heart tree, its weirwood face carved with sorrow. The Godswood was his sanctuary, the only place where the weight of his secret didn't crush him. His dreams had grown sharper, more urgent, guided by the 3-eyed crow that haunted his sleep. Last night he'd seen his father standing in a hall of iron, a lion's shadow looming behind him, and a boy with Robert's eyes, Gendry, running through flames. Bran had told Robb who'd sent a raven south, but the distance between Winterfell and King's Landing felt vast, and Bran feared the warning would come too late. Ned's honor demanded he act, but his caution, honed by years of northern pragmatism, urged patience. Robert Baratheon, his king and friend, was a storm of a man, quick to rage and slow to reason. If Ned presented the truth without ironclad proof, Robert might dismiss it as slander, or worse, act rashly and plunge the realm into war. Yet silence was no longer an option. Cersei's spies were closing in, Jaime's blade gleamed too often, and Bran's safety hung by a thread. In King's Landing, the court buzzed with tension. Cersei Lannister, radiant in green silk, moved through the throne room like a queen carved from ice, her smile a weapon. She sensed Ned's probing, the way his gray eyes lingered on her and Jaime. The fire in the Tower of the Hand had been her warning, but it hadn't stopped him. Lancel's capture in Winterfell, reported by a frantic writer, had confirmed her worst fears. The Starks knew something, and Ned was digging too close to the truth. In her chambers, Cersei paced, her voice low and venomous. "That boy, Bran, saw us in the tower, I know it. And now Ned's sniffing around, stirring up Aaron's old ghosts." Jaime leaned against the wall, his hand resting on his sword. "Then we end it. Stark's men are few. A blade in the dark, a fall from a horse." "No," Cersei snapped, her eyes blazing. "Kill Ned now, and Robert will suspect us. We need to discredit him first. Turn the court against him. Make him a traitor in Robert's eyes." Jaime's lip curled. "And the boy? If he talks—" Cersei's smile was cold. "Leave Bran to me. A child's word is easily dismissed, but we must act fast. Father will not forgive failure." Tywin Lannister, though far away in Casterly Rock, loomed over their plans. Cersei had written to him, cloaking her words in code, but his reply was clear. Protect the Lannister legacy at all costs. If the truth of Joffrey's parentage came to light, Tywin's wrath would be a storm to rival Robert's. Ned chose his moment carefully. Robert had returned from a hunt, his mood soured by a missed stag and too much wine. The king slumped in his private chambers, the Iron Throne's shadow replaced by a cluttered table and a roaring fire. Ned stood before him, his heart heavy but his resolve firm. "Robert," Ned began, his voice steady, "there's a truth you must hear. It's about Cersei and Jaime. They're lovers. The children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, are not yours." The words hung in the air like a drawn blade. Robert's face reddened, his hand tightening around his goblet. "You dare!" he growled, rising. "You dare accuse my wife, my queen, of this filth? Based on what? A boy's tale?" Ned held his ground. "Bran saw them, Robert, in Winterfell. And there's more. Jon Arryn's investigations, Stannis' suspicions, Lancel's confession. I've no proof to lay before you, not yet, but the pieces fit. Cersei's children are Jaime's. The throne is built on a lie." Robert's roar shook the room. "A lie! You call my heir a lie!" He hurled the goblet, wine splattering the stone. "You're my friend, Ned, but this is treason! Give me proof or I'll have your head!" Ned's voice remained calm, though his heart raced. "I'm gathering it. Gendry, you're a bastard, proves your blood runs dark-haired. The royal children are golden, everyone. It's no coincidence. Let me bring you the truth, Robert. But you must be ready to act." Robert staggered, his rage giving way to doubt. He slumped back into his chair, his eyes haunted. "If this is true... Gods, Ned, it means I've no heir, no legacy, just a whore for a wife and a snake for a brother-in-law." Ned knelt, his voice soft. "You're the king. You can set it right, but we must be careful. The Lannisters will fight to protect their secret." Robert stared into the fire, his silence heavy. Finally he nodded. "Find your proof, Ned. But if you're wrong, or if you bring war to my door without cause, our friendship won't save you." In Winterfell, Robb Stark stood in the great hall, his dire-wolf Grey Wind growling at his side. Lancel Lannister, confined to a guarded chamber, had confessed more under pressure. Cersei had ordered him to monitor Bran, to ensure the boy's silence. The confession was damning, but it stopped short of confirming the incest. Robb sent another raven to Ned, enclosing Lancel's written statement, but he knew the South was a viper's nest. His father needed more than words of sway a king. Catelyn, ever the strategist, urged caution. "We can't trust the Lannisters to sit idle. If they suspect Bran's knowledge, they will strike. At him, at us, at Ned. Bran, listening from the shadows, felt the weight of his family's fear. His dreams were no longer just dreams. They were visions, glimpses of truths he didn't fully understand. The three-eyed crow showed him a green flame, a city burning, and his father facing a golden lion. He told Catelyn, his voice trembling but firm. "Father's in danger, Mother. I saw it, and Gendry. He's important. We have to help him." Catelyn's eyes softened, but her resolve hardened. "You're brave, Bran, but you're still a boy. Stay safe. Let Robb and I handle this." Bran nodded, but he couldn't shake the crow's voice. "Look with your eyes, Brandon Stark. See the truth." That night he slipped into the God's Wood, kneeling before the heart tree. The wind stirred, and he saw a vision. Ned in a dark alley, Jory's men falling, and Jaime's sword flashing. Bran woke gasping, his heart pounding. He ran to Robb, begging him to send men south. Robb hesitated. Winterfell's garrison was stretched thin, and the north needed protecting. But Bran's desperation swayed him. "I'll send Theon with a small party," Robb said. "They'll find Father and warn him. But you, Bran, stay here, no more risks." In King's Landing, the Lannisters moved swiftly. Cersei, informed of Lancel's capture, knew the Starks had leverage. She summoned Peter Baelish to her chambers, her voice honeyed but laced with steel. "Lord Stark is stirring trouble. I need him silenced. Not killed, not yet, but discredited. Can you manage it?" Baelish's smile was a blade. "For a price, Your Grace. Stark's honor makes him predictable. A few whispers, a forged letter, and the court will see him as a northern schemer." Cersei nodded. "Do it. And find me that bastard boy, Gendry. He's a loose thread." Baelish bowed, already plotting. He planted rumors that Ned was conspiring with Stannis to seize the throne, forging a letter in Ned's hand that suggested treasonous intent. The letter reached Robert's desk, and though the king dismissed it as a clumsy fake, doubt took root. Cersei's whispers spread, painting Ned as a power-hungry lord using his friendship to manipulate the crown. Jaime, less patient, took a bolder approach. He ambushed Jory Castle's patrol in a flea-bottom alley, his blade swift and merciless. Jory fought bravely, wounding Jaime's arm, but the Kingslayer's skill was unmatched. Jory fell, and 3 of Ned's men with him. Jaime vanished into the night, leaving a message carved in blood. "Back off." Ned found the bodies at dawn, his grief tempered by rage. He confronted Robert in the throne room, heedless of the watching court. "This was Jaime's work, Robert. Your wife's brother. They're covering their tracks." Cersei rose, her voice dripping with outrage. "You accuse my brother of murder based on nothing? Lord Stark, your northern grudges have no place here." Robert's face darkened, torn between his friend and his queen. "Enough!" he roared. "Ned, bring me proof, or hold your tongue. I'll not have my court torn apart by accusations." Ned left the throne room, his resolve unshaken but his options dwindling. He sent Arya and Sansa to the Tower of the Hand, guarded by his remaining men. Arya, restless and fierce, slipped out to trail Jaime, her small form unnoticed in the Red Keep's chaos. She overheard him speaking to a gold cloak, ordering Gendry's capture. Arya ran to Ned, her words tumbling out. "Father, Jaime's after Gendry. They're going to kill him." Ned's heart sank. Gendry was his best chance to prove Robert's blood ran true. He sent his last trusted man, Harwin, to smuggle Gendry out of the city, but the boy was already gone, spirited away by Varys' agents. The spider, ever enigmatic, left Ned a note. "The boy is safe for now, but the lioness hunts. Choose your moment wisely." In Winterfell, Theon Greyjoy rode south with 12 men, tasked with warning Ned. The journey was perilous, with Lannister spies lurking on the King's Road. Theon, eager to prove himself, pushed his men hard, but his recklessness drew attention. Near the Trident, they were ambushed by Lannister sellswords. Theon fought fiercely, his bow felling 3, but half his men died, and he was forced to flee, wounded and alone. He sent a raven to Winterfell, warning Robb of the Lannisters' reach. Robb, reading the message, cursed. "They're closing in, Mother! We need allies! The Tullys, the Arryns, someone!" Catelyn nodded, her mind racing. "I'll write to River Run, and Lysa, though she's unreliable. But we must protect Bran. His dreams... they're more than dreams." Bran, overhearing, felt the crow's presence stronger than ever. That night he dreamed of a great fire in King's Landing, Ned standing before the Iron Throne, and a crow circling above. The crow spoke. The truth burns Brandon Stark. Guide him. Bran woke, tears on his cheeks. He didn't know how, but he had to help his father. He slipped into Maester Luwin's chambers, begging for a way to reach Ned faster than a raven. Luwin, skeptical, but moved by Bran's desperation, suggested an old northern ritual, burning a weirwood branch to send a message through the gods. Bran, clutching a branch from the godswood, performed the ritual, whispering, "Father, Gendry's the key! Trust the crow!" The smoke rose, and Bran felt a strange pull, as if his words had crossed the miles. In King's Landing, Ned received a cryptic message from Varys, hinting at a hidden ledger in Jon Arryn's old chambers. Ned searched, finding a book of royal genealogies, its pages marked with Arryn's notes on Baratheon and Lannister bloodlines. It was damning, proof that no Baratheon child had ever been golden-haired save Cersei's. Combined with Gendry's existence and Lancel's confession, it was enough to sway Robert. Ned prepared to present his case, but Cersei struck first. She staged a public accusation, claiming Ned had forged Stannis' letter to incite rebellion. The court, swayed by Baelish's rumors, murmured against him. Robert, torn and half-drunk, ordered Ned confined to the Tower of the Hand until the matter was resolved. Ned, locked in his chambers, received Bran's message, not in words, but in a dream. He saw a crow, a boy with Robert's eyes, and a book burning in green flame. He woke, his resolve hardened. He had the ledger hidden beneath a floorboard. He needed to get it to Robert. Arya, ever defiant, slipped through the Red Keep's tunnels, stealing a key to Ned's chambers. She freed him, her eyes fierce. "You have to fight, Father. They're lying about you." Ned hugged her, his heart breaking. "Stay safe, Arya. Find Sansa. I'll end this." With Harwin and his last men, Ned broke through the gold cloaks guarding the throne room. He faced Robert, Cersei, and Jaime, the court watching like vultures. Ned held up the ledger, his voice ringing. "This is Jon Arryn's work, Robert. Proof your children are not yours. Cersei and Jaime have betrayed you. The throne is yours, but its heirs are a lie." Cersei laughed, her voice sharp. "A book? You base treasoned on scribbles? Lord Stark has lost his mind." Jaime stepped forward, his hand on his sword. "Let me end this farce, your grace." Robert's eyes burned, his rage boiling over. "Silence!" he roared. He took the ledger, flipping through its pages, his face darkening with each line. "Ned, if this is true—" "It is," Ned said, his voice steady. "And there's more. Gendry, your son, lives. His blood proves the truth. Cersei's children are Jaime's." The court gasped. Cersei's face paled, but she rallied, her voice venomous. "Lies. All of it. Robert, he seeks to steal your throne." Robert turned to her, his eyes wild. "If it's lies, Cersei, why do you tremble?" Before she could answer, Jaime drew his sword, lunging at Ned. Harwin blocked the blow, but Jaime's skill was lethal. Ned drew ice, meeting Jaime's steel with northern fury. The throne room erupted, gold cloaks clashing with Ned's men, courtiers screaming. In Winterfell, Bran screamed, waking from a vision of his father's blade against Jaime's. He ran to the godswood, praying, "Save him!" The crow's voice echoed, "The truth burns." And in King's Landing, the truth was a spark, igniting a fire that could consume them all. The throne room of the Red Keep was a storm of steel and screams, the Iron Throne looming like a jagged specter over the chaos. Eddard Stark parried Jaime Lannister's blade, ice clashing with Oathkeeper in a shower of sparks. The Kingslayer's strikes were swift, precise, but Ned fought with the grim determinations of a man defending his family, his honor, his king. Around them, gold cloaks battled Ned's remaining men, their shouts drowned by the clash of swords and the cries of panicked courtiers. King Robert Baratheon stood frozen, the ledger of Jon Arryn's genealogies clutched in his hands, its pages damning Cersei and Jaime. His face was a mask of rage and betrayal, his eyes darting between his wife and his friend, Cersei Lannister. Her composure shattered, screamed orders to the gold cloaks, her voice shrill. "Seize Stark! He's a traitor!" But Robert's roar cut through the din. "Enough!" The word shook the hall, silencing the court. He hurled the ledger to the floor, its pages scattering. "Ned speaks truth, Cersei. I see it in your eyes. You and Jaime. Gods, how long?" Cersei's face paled, but she rallied, her voice venomous. "Lies, Robert. Stark seeks your throne, and you're too drunk to see it." Jaime, locked in combat with Ned, hesitated at her words, his eyes flicking to his sister. That moment was Ned's opening. He drove ice forward, catching Jaime's arm, drawing blood. Jaime snarled, retreating, but the tide was turning. Ned's men, though outnumbered, fought with northern ferocity, and the gold cloaks wavered under Robert's glare. Robert strode forward, his warhammer in hand, his voice a bellow. "Jaime Lannister, stand down, or I'll crush your skull myself!" Jaime's eyes burned with defiance, but he saw the odds shifting. He lowered his sword, blood dripping from his wounded arm. The gold cloaks followed, stepping back, their loyalty to Cersei faltering under the king's wrath. Ned lowered ice, his chest heaving, his gaze locked on Jaime. Cersei's voice was a hiss. "Robert, you can't believe this northern dog over your queen." Robert turned to her, his eyes wild. "I believe my eyes, woman. Your children, Joffrey, Myrcella, Tommen, they're not mine. They're his." He pointed at Jaime, his hand trembling with rage. "You've made a fool of me, Cersei. A fool of the realm." The court gasped, the truth laid bare. Peter Baelish, lurking at the edges, slipped from the hall, his plans unraveling. Varys, ever the shadow, watched with unreadable eyes. Grand Maester Pycelle stammered protests, but no one listened. The Lannister lie was exposed, and the Iron Throne trembled. In Winterfell, Bran Stark woke screaming. His vision of the throne room clashed, fading into the cold reality of the Godswood. The heart tree's red eyes seemed to pulse, the three-eyed crow's voice echoing in his mind. "The truth burns, Brandon Stark. Guide them." His heart pounded, but he felt a strange clarity, as if the gods themselves had chosen him to see what others could not. He ran to the great hall where Robb and Catelyn were poring over maps, planning for war. The North was on edge. Lancel Lannister's confession, sent by Raven from King's Landing, had confirmed Cersei's treachery, and Robb had called the banners, summoning the Northern Lords to Winterfell. Bran burst in, his voice urgent. "Father did it! He told the king the truth! They're fighting in the throne room!" Catelyn's face paled, but her resolve was iron. "Bran, how do you know this?" "The crows showed me," Bran said, his eyes wide. "Father faced Jaime. The king believes him, but it's not over. War's coming." Robb's jaw tightened. "If Father's exposed the Lannisters, the realm will fracture. We need to be ready." Catelyn took Bran's hands, her voice steady. "You've seen true, Bran. Your gift is our strength. Tell us what else you see." Bran closed his eyes, the crow's voice guiding him. He saw fire spreading from King's Landing, rivers running red, and a shadow of a lion clashing with a stag. "The South will burn," he whispered, "but the North will stand. Father needs Gendry. He's the proof." Robb nodded, his youth giving way to command. "We'll send men to find Gendry. Theon's still out there, wounded but alive. He'll track him down." Bran felt the weight of his visions, but also their power. He was no longer just a boy. He was a Stark, a seer, and the North's eyes. "I'll keep watching," he vowed, "for Father, for us." In King's Landing, the aftermath of the throne room clash was swift and brutal. Robert ordered Cersei and Jaime confined to the black cells, their fate to be decided by trial. Joffrey, Myrcella, and Tommen were placed under guard, their royal status revoked. The court reeled, divided between those loyal to Robert and those swayed by Lannister gold. Stannis Baratheon, summoned from Dragonstone, arrived with his fleet, his grim face set for war. He confirmed Jon Arryn's findings, his voice cold. "The throne is Robert's, but the realm must be cleansed of Lannister rot." Ned, bloodied but unbowed, stood by Robert's side, his honor intact but his heart heavy. The cost of truth was clear. War was inevitable. Tywin Lannister, informed of his children's disgrace, would rally his armies. The Riverlands, the Vale, the Stormlands, each would choose a side, and blood would flow. Robert, sobered by betrayal, named Ned his hand in truth, granting him authority to muster the crown's forces. "You were right, Ned," he said, his voice rough. "I should have listened sooner. Now we fight to hold what's mine." Ned nodded, his thoughts on Winterfell, on Bran, on the family he'd sworn to protect. "We'll hold the realm, Robert, for honor, for justice." But the Lannisters were not done. Cersei in her cell whispered to a loyal guard, her voice a serpent's hiss. "Send word to Father. Tell him to burn the South before he bends the knee." Jaime, chained beside her, smirked despite his wounds. "The game's not over, sister. Not while we breathe." The realm fractured as spring turned to summer. Tywin Lannister declared war, his banners raised in the Westerlands, calling Cersei's accusers liars and Ned a usurper. The The Riverlands, caught between Stark and Lannister, became a battleground, its fields trampled by marching armies. Stannis, with Robert's blessing, led the royal fleet against Lannister strongholds, while Ned sent ravens to River Run, seeking Hoster Tully's aid. Lisa Arryn, paranoid and isolated, refused to join, leaving the Vale neutral, for now. In the north, Robb Stark marshaled his bannermen, the direwolf banners flying over Winterfell. The Umbers, Karstarks, and Manderlys swore fealty, their voices a chorus of defiance. Catelyn, ever the Tully, negotiated with her father's bannermen, securing River Run support. Bran, guided by his visions, became a quiet force, his dreams warning of Lannister ambushes and southern betrayals. Maester Luwin, skeptical at first, now recorded Bran's visions, seeing them as the gods' will. Theon Greyjoy, battered but alive, returned to Winterfell with news. Gendry was hidden in the Stormlands, guarded by Varys' agents. Robb dispatched a party led by Sir Roderick Cassel to retrieve him, knowing Gendry's Baratheon blood could rally Robert's allies. Bran, in a vision, saw Gendry standing before the Iron Throne, his dark hair a mirror of Robert's youth. "He'll live," Bran told Robb. "He's the key." In King's Landing, Ned faced the growing storm. Robert's health faltered, the years of drink and excess taking their toll. Ned, as Hand, shouldered the burden of governance, his northern honor a beacon to some, a target to others. Arya, fierce and uncaged, trained with a bravo's blade, vowing to protect her family. Sansa, her dreams of chivalry shattered, grew quieter but stronger, learning the court's games under Ned's guidance. Varys, ever enigmatic, offered Ned a final gift, a letter from Tywin Lannister to a Dornish ally, promising vengeance for Elia Martell's death if Dorne joined the Lannisters. Ned used it to sway Prince Doran Martell to Robert's side, though Dorne's support was grudging. The realm's alliances shifted daily, each lord weighing honor against survival. One night, Ned dreamed of Bran, a crow circling above him, its voice clear. "The North endures, father. Trust the truth." He woke, ice at his side, knowing the war would test them all. He wrote to Winterfell, his words simple. "Hold fast, my sons. The Starks will prevail." As autumn loomed and the first battles erupted, Tywin's forces clashed with Tully bannermen at the Red Fork, the river running red. Stannis' fleet burned Lannister ships at Lannisport, but Tywin's gold bought sellsword swelling his ranks. Robert, rallying his strength, led a host to Storm's End, determined to crush rebellion. Ned at his side wielded ice with grim purpose, his thoughts on Bran's courage, the spark that had ignited this fire. In Winterfell, Bran stood before the Heart Tree, his visions a tapestry of war and hope. He saw Robb leading men, Catelyn forging alliances, and Ned standing tall against a golden tide. The crow spoke. "You are the North's eyes, Brandon Stark. See, and they will follow." Bran nodded, his small frame straight, his heart fierce. He was no longer the boy who'd climbed the broken tower. He was a Stark, a seer, and the truth's guardian. As the winds of war howled, he whispered to the gods, "Winter is coming, and we'll meet it." The realm burned, but the North stood unbowed. The truth Bran had uncovered had shattered the Lannister lie, and though this cost was blood, the Stark's honor held firm. The Game of Thrones raged on, but the direwolf's howl echoed louder than the lion's roar.